Oftentimes when people call my office, they say, I need a will. People think they need a will, and that's all that they need. But in fact, quite often a trust makes a lot more sense. So I want to do this little video about what's the difference between a will and a trust. First of all, a will requires that you go through probate. Probate is the court process that retitles your assets into somebody else's name when you die. You can avoid probate by having a trust. Probate is a public process, and a trust is a private process. A will doesn't have any protections for minors. If you leave money to your minor child in a will, and then you die, your child is going to receive whatever you left them outright at age 18 with no oversight. If, however, you leave your assets to your children in a trust, you can set it up so that they receive the money at a later age, perhaps when they have learned how to stand on their feet as adults. Because receiving a bunch of money when you're 18 or close to that can really mess you up. Another difference between a will and a trust is that a will doesn't have anything to do with your incapacity. It's only about your death. And in fact, a will is kind of a worthless piece of paper until you die. A trust, on the other hand, also deals with what happens when you die, but can also deal with what happens if you were to become incapacitated. You can set up pretty complex systems to make sure that you're properly taken care of in a trust. Probating a will, meaning passing it through that court process of probate, can take up to 2 years right now in California. A trust is private, doesn't require the court, and so doesn't require the delays associated with court, and so distribution of assets can be much quicker. When you have a will and you die, your assets are frozen. That means that your loved ones will have very little access to them. And that can last for as long as the probate lasts, which means up to 24 months. With the trust, your assets aren't frozen at death. And so they can be used by your family and the like in ways that make sense. A will is relatively easy to contest, meaning to argue with whether or not it should be probated the way that it was written. A trust is much more difficult to contest. A will takes a little bit less time to create. A trust takes a little bit longer. And for that reason, a will tends to be less expensive to draft than a trust. The thing about a trust is that you save a bunch of money up front. You may spend a few $1,000s on creating an estate plan that includes a trust. But if you don't have a trust, your assets are going to go through probate, and probate is expensive. It can cost up to 5% of your estate. So if you have $1 million estate, that's $50,000 out the door for probate right there. Whereas a revocable trust plan might cost you something between $5,000 to $7,000. So although a trust can cost more on the front end, it can save you tens of thousands of dollars on the back end. And that's what a trust is. You do a little bit more work on the front end, better results for your family on the back end. So those are the difference between a will and a trust. If you'd like to chat with me more about the difference and what might be right for you, feel free to reach out.